All right. Welcome to the Allied Challenge. I'm Casey Campbell with Great Lakes Post, and of course, we're here all weekend long. But we do want to pivot to some other news that broke yesterday with the MHSAA. And now I'm joined by Mark Ewell, who is the Executive Director of the MHSAA. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Casey, good to be with you.
Hey, you had some big announcements yesterday regarding high school sports, and I know there's been a lot of confusion about what those announcements were. Can you kind of explain to a lot of people, because there is some confusion, I'm being told.
So, yeah, and a lot of times, Casey, the confusion is when folks just read the headline, but don't release or read the full release. So a little tongue in cheek, but our board, our representative council, which is a 19-member governing board of superintendents, principals, athletic directors, coaches, and even an appointee from the Michigan Department of Education, that they approved a phased-in approach to fall athletics. This actually comes as a result of good communication, which has been ongoing with the governor's office, and just making sure that we're following Governor Whitmer's roadmap to opening schools, of which athletics is a part of that, as well as complying with all executive orders. So we'll really take these in two groups. The first is for all of our low-risk sports, and right now that's 4 fall sports. That's golf, tennis, cross-country, and swimming and diving. Those sports can start practice on time, which is the 12th, and then they can begin competing on time, which, depending on the sports, is either the 19th or the 21st. Now, of course, swimming, that's pending some further action from Governor Whitmer regarding the opening of indoor facilities, in this case being swimming pools, and it's the same case when it comes with indoor facilities with volleyball. So that's how we're handling the low-risk sports. Start on time, both practice and competition. What we're doing with the other 3 sports, which are moderate and high-risk sports, which really happen to be what you could really call our 3 team sports in the fall, is volleyball, soccer, and football. Not that the other 4 sports don't have a team component, but in those other 4 sports, it's how kids do individually builds toward a team score, to where in volleyball, soccer, and football, it's those are truly what you would consider to be a team sport. So in those sports, we're also starting practice on time. So let's take soccer and volleyball first, that they can begin practice on time on August the 12th. Now, of course, volleyball, same as swim, it's dependent on the governor and further direction opening up school facilities in light of those that are having face-to-face instruction in August, as well as with the start of school sports. But they can start practice, but we're going to wait on competition beginning, and we're going to make a call there by August the 20th, because what we want to watch is our low-risk sports, what kind of start they get off to in terms of practices and competition. We want to see what kind of start practices get off to with our 3 team sports, with volleyball, soccer, and football. Now in football, we did move back the start of fully padded football practice to Monday, August 17th. So the first week of football practice is really going to be in helmets only. Now, what that's going to allow is an awful lot of the activity that our football schools have frankly been doing since June: conditioning, physical training, skill work. But what we're going to allow the 10th is players can wear helmets. We're going to allow the use of hand shields, handheld dummies, all kinds of different agility equipment, those kinds of things. And we're going to allow schools to do 7-on-7s. We're going to allow them to do handoffs and to do quarterback center exchanges, to where really the week of the 10th, it's going to be a way to kind of ease back into activity. Again, we're not hitting yet. So, during those times between drills or during breaks, we'll practice physical distancing when we can. But during the week of the 10th, we're going to use that to kind of ramp up to that first fully padded practice, which can happen that following Monday. Again, August 20th will be the date that we give soccer, volleyball, and football either the go-ahead to start competition as scheduled, which could mean that teams in those three sports don't miss a single scheduled competition. That football games could be played week 1 because the 20th is the Thursday before the following week in which games can be played. Now, what is significant is we're not allowing any scrimmages in any fall sport. So the traditional football scrimmages, those aren't happening this year. Any scrimmages in any of our sports this fall will not happen. The concept there being that we're going to get kids together from different schools when it counts, when it matters. And you would hate to, have schools, through multiple scrimmages, and that's where, potentially you could have an issue. And then lastly, what our board did yesterday is we did come up with some new competition limits. Now, in some sports, it's really going to have no impact. So football, soccer, sports like that, almost no impact. In, for example, a sport like golf, what we're going to do is we're going to limit the size of the field to 4 golfers per hole. So in other words, if it's just a 9-hole league match, the field can be no bigger than 36. 9 holes times 4 competitors per hole, 36. If it's going to be an 18-hole tournament, then you take 18 times 4. Well, now your field could be 72 golfers. If you're on a large course to where you're using all 27 holes, 27 times 4, and I think you've now got the methodology there. Same thing with cross country. We're limiting a race to no more than 10 teams or 70 kids on the starting line, no more than 70 kids that would be going through the finish area at the close of a race. So we did put in some things that we just thought were common sense, no more than 4 teams at a volleyball tournament. Again, just to try and allow regular season competition to happen, allow it to happen safely, but putting, I think, some reasonable limits on that in trying to keep everybody as safe as possible. So kind of a long-winded answer there to, what was decided or what changed yesterday, but hopefully your viewers here, will take that summary and that'll answer a lot of the questions.
Yeah, that was a lot of information there. I also want to get your reaction to news that just literally broke before we came on, and that's the big Zenith Prep Kickoff Classic just got canceled because of COVID-19. That's, of course, a big thing to kick off the football season. I know that a lot of the top teams go there, and that would create a lot of cohesiveness. Did you have any idea about that was going to happen?
Yep. So we knew that was coming. And to be honest, Casey, some of these other opening week of football type events to where you've got a number of different teams rotating through a facility, spectators are obviously going to be limited. We don't know what those limits are yet, but now you're even getting different groups of spectators through, given the fact that this was going to be held at Wayne State, which, they put some things in place for their campus. There were just a number of challenges that really make sense to why that event can't go on as it has in past years. Now, you could still have those top teams playing each other, but it's going to be at a single site facility to where the only game on that date is going to be those 2 teams playing, to where now you're only getting 2 teams in and out of a facility, only 2 sets of team personnel, spectators in and out of a facility. So yeah, well, certainly I think, high school football fans are disappointed that that's not going to happen this year. I do think that it really is just common sense in talking about how we're trying to limit some of the large, big scale tournaments, invites this year, and try and keep competition as much of just, 2 schools competing each other at a site as possible. So certainly disappointing, but not a surprise.
Yeah. I also want to ask you, I know we saw in Marion County, Indiana yesterday that they imposed county-wide restrictions on top risk sports like football, soccer, and volleyball. I know you guys have made plans just in case if that sort of thing were to happen. What would happen if a scenario like that could happen, where an entire county could not do it because their county health department said, no, we don't want to do this?
So we certainly could be in that situation, and maybe it's not even on a county-wide basis, but Casey, I think it's not a huge leap. that if we have individual school districts that opt out of participating in fall sports, maybe it's a district that is starting their school year completely online, that might be a reason to why they would opt out. The thing is, I've heard from many districts that are starting the year virtually online, or actually, I got my online and virtually there mixed up, who are starting their school years exclusively through virtual education or online,
Yeah.
that they're actually wanting to have sports because they think that they can really learn some lessons in getting kids back on campus, who, by the way, are in small groups, pods, or cohorts. You don't have a lot of mixing of JV volleyball players with your cross-country runners, or freshman football players mixing with your golfers. What you do is you have kids who return essentially in the same small groups day after day with the same adults as coaches, as instructors, in that really districts are wanting to have some experience with this to see if there are some lessons that they can then apply, hopefully in late September or early October, when conditions are at a point to where those districts feel comfortable in getting kids back in the building during the day. So some would say, well, that sends a bad message, that, you know, if a school district isn't having kids in the school buildings, so if it's not safe to have classes, well, how can you have athletics? Well, I certainly can see that, but yet if you talk about health and safety, we're not going to do anything athletically that is not fully in line with the directives that we're being given from the governor's office, from our state health department officials. And I'm telling you that when you think of health and safety, you can't only think of COVID, but you've got to think of mental health. What our kids have been through over the last 4.5 months, and if there's an opportunity to have activity and to do it safely, I think we have to be ready to go. Because if we would say, you know what, we're not doing fall sports this year, and I don't mean to cast any dispersions, there are many fine people that work or volunteer in the non-school sports world. But Casey, if we don't have school-based activity, you can imagine the number of AAU and club and travel teams that are going to be ready to go, that are going to be having activity. And while I have respect for a lot of those groups and the people that are associated with those, I just believe that kids returning to activity can do it the most safely with professional educators, with coaches of school teams in school settings, where I can guarantee you, Casey, that every directive of our government and state health department officials will be followed. This summer, in a lot of pockets in certain sports in the club travel world, it is the wild, wild west of what's going on with travel baseball and travel softball and travel soccer, and kids going to AAU basketball tournaments every weekend just across the state lines into Indiana, for example. So, well, yeah, I understand, you know, kids on campus. I'm also hearing from some of the school district leaders that, yeah, even though, Mark, we're educating our kids to start exclusively online, we want to have this opportunity to learn some lessons here. And so athletics do have a place in our school community here this fall.
I also want to ask you about, there was some news earlier today in Illinois, which could affect this state as well. I've heard reports that they could allow students that play in fall sports to go to other states and play if they allow it, and then come back there to play for their state. Is that a scenario that you think, if football moves to the spring, is that a scenario that Michigan could possibly have?
So I do know that in being on a call from my colleagues in various Midwest states today, that there were hundreds of inquiries in the two states that border Illinois on both the east and the west. I'll let folks' geographical imaginations figure out what two states they are. But they were inundated with calls from Illinois families who are ready to transfer and move across state lines with that announcement. So some people have said, well, you know, why not just do the easy thing and cancel all of your fall activity now? Well, if we would do that now, Casey, you'd see that same exodus of an awful lot of kids and families in a time to where school districts are fighting for every single student and every single dollar that comes with those students. that is not the time to make that decision. It's to slow it down, to take things in small increments of time and see where this eventually leads. Now, for kids coming to Michigan from out of state, they've got to meet one of the exceptions to our transfer rule. The most common exception is when it's a full and complete family move. That's the entire family unit. Let's say that they're in Elgin, Illinois, a family of 4 with mom and dad and 2 kids. They have to move completely out of Elgin, Illinois and into a residence in Michigan. And then they're eligible in the closest, in the school district that they move into or the closest non-public school to their new residence. That means that they cannot keep that old residence in Illinois for any residential purpose. So you can't just get an address, you can't just get an apartment. That for any families that do come to Michigan and you want to play this fall, you've got to meet one of the exceptions to the transfer rule for kids who would be sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Do know that in our transfer rule that anyone who is a first-time freshman student does have immediate eligibility. So in those cases, an incoming freshman could be eligible right away. So we'll keep monitoring that. I'm sure as other surrounding states make other decisions here over the next few weeks, that could impact us differently. But the phone was ringing off the hook this morning in the state association offices in states. I know that at least a couple of states that border Illinois.
Yeah. I also want to, you also, in the announcements yesterday, you also posted guidelines for each fall sport. And if you want to go read all of them, just go on MHSA.com and you can do that. But I want to pick out some good ones, especially for football. If I picked them all out, we'd be here for hours.
Yes, we would.
But football, I want to point out a couple of things with that. Kind of talk about 3 things kind of pop out to me. Transportation is 1. 2 is how the benches are going to be with how spacing out. And then the 3rd one is masks. What's kind of with that for football? Just kind of explain that.
So transportation, there's probably more questions there right now than answers, Casey. And certainly transportation of athletics, transportation of students in those districts where they're going to have kids on campus. There's a lot of things that still have to get worked out. Certainly some of those are answered by the governor's roadmap, but more information to come here over the next 10 days or so with that. When it comes to the non-participants, the team boxes this year for players will be extended from the 10-yard line to the other 10-yard line. So there is going to be more than enough room because normally those have been at the 25. So we're expanding that area by 30 yards that the players on a sideline can spread out and remain socially distant. Now, when it comes to masks, there is no requirement that kids engaged in active participation wear a mask. Now, kids who aren't in the game or on the sidelines, the mask is something that is part of our guidance. So what I really see happening, Casey, is it's not the face mask that fits over the ears. It's the neck gaiter. It's that, kind of almost
something like this.
Got it right there. And the thing is, we get a little bit of, kids won't be comfortable wearing those. Well, I have been to countless numbers of playoff games during the month of November where every kid wears one of these. And you know what? And when they're playing or they get warm, the thing got pulled down. And then when they went to the sideline to try and warm up, where would the neck gaiter go? They'd pull it up just below their eyes to keep them warm. Well, if we want to continue to play and be safe during COVID, that's something that kids are going to have to do as they come off the field. And then obviously masks may be worn by officials, but the same thing because they could be running or moving. So if they're in active participation, their neck gaiter could be pulled down for in cases I have to blow my whistle or I have to be able to make a penalty announcement. If, for example, the field referee is on a microphone, but yet during timeouts or breaks, same thing, pull your neck gaiter up and you're all set with that. So that's how we're handling masks. That's how we're handling the team boxes. And then a lot more to come here yet on the transportation issues.
And there's also one more thing I did leave out. Halftime. For football purposes in there, what could possibly that look like? Because I don't think teams are probably going to be going into the locker rooms or anything like that. And there was also something that the home team does not have to provide the visiting team locker room. I read that and I thought that was interesting. Just
Well,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah, in my early coaching days, Casey, there were many a time to where our halftime locker room was the bus parked next to a porta-john. And that just in some of the small rural schools where I started coaching, that was just a way of life. Certainly what I see halftime, whether it's on a part of the field or if a team has some open space off the field of halftime being outdoors with everybody being physically distant, being able to have those conversations as they need to. Certainly that's going to vary by facilities. There's some places to where, again, if indoor facility, the high school is right next to the stadium, and maybe the two teams each get the gymnasiums, where then they could spread out indoors, especially, or you're in inclement raining sideways. Again, each facility is going to be in terms of how we handle where do teams go at halftime and what do look like. So we'll just kind of see how that plays out. But our main focus right now, Casey, is on the start of practice in the first 2 weeks, and then we'll continue. And it's no different right now than what the pro teams are doing. Yeah, the pro teams had a plan, but, as they've gotten started, those have been constantly evolving and tweaking and changing. And we see that same process here playing out during the month of August.
And one last thing I want to ask you about, and in regards cross country, I don't know if you heard this, but the Huron-Clinton Metro Park system is kind of not allowing as many participants as it was. I think I read about 100 people, and there's a number of teams that use that system for home courses. What are schools advised to do there?
So part of this is we're still waiting more guidance from the governor's office about what is going to be the exact number of individuals at an event, at a site, based on the phases. As more executive orders, Casey, have come out, some of those numbers are now a little bit in conflict. And that is not a criticism, because as as the governor continues to make decisions that she believes is best, you're going to over time just have some numbers that don't quite match up in the phases. So part of it is a little bit of a wait and see, but I do know that we have a number of schools who right now are saying, look, for this year, we know that we're going to have to do more dual meets than ever before, that we can't have these large groups at the Metro Park. So you know what? We're working right now with our grounds and maintenance staff of trying to chart out just a smaller home course on our campus where we can get us and another school together, and we can race, and we can get times, and the kids can compete. So you know what? Some of those meets, Casey, may look different. It may actually be a case of some more home cross-country meets on the school's campus than ever before that we've had. But that's something I know that our ADs are working on literally as we speak.
All right. Mark, there's so much to cover, and we'll probably do more of these as time goes along. But Mark, I want to really thank you so much for doing this, man. Really appreciate this.
You bet, Casey. Take care.